this practice is going to be a couple of openings that we can take on a rolled up blanket or a rolled up towel, one for our upper back and one for the low back. We'll take some twists and some other movements in between them, just to sort of reset the shoulders and the pelvis along with the upper back and the low back. It's important to know before we start that these openings can feel a bit achy, but that is normal. And unless anything feels pinchy or, well, really, if anything feels just not right, roll yourself off, do a little less, maybe do it without the roll and make it smaller, and make sure that you can always breathe fluidly and smooth with the openings. So you're never straining or holding your breath. I think that's all I need to introduce this with. Otherwise, we're just going to take, I've got a blanket here, it's a rather big one. So again, you can take a towel or even a rolled up yoga mat, as long as something has a little bit of give to it. We wouldn't want to use a stiff foam roller for this opening. We're going to start with the roll at our upper back. So you can roll it up and then lean back on it so that it's about at the level of the bottom of your shoulder blades. I like to rock back and forth a little bit to sort of spread out the space between my shoulder blades and then hold my head up just about at the level of my heart. My fingers are interlaced behind my head, and I'm just trying to give as much of the weight of my head to my hands as I can, and to give as much of the weight of my upper back to the blanket as I can. My elbow tips pointing up toward the ceiling allow my shoulder blades to angle themselves in such a way that the inner edge of them is pointing toward the ground. I can imagine that they are angled in that direction. So in addition to trying to soften the muscles that the pressure of the blanket is resting against, I'm trying to lengthen my upper spine and imagining the slow, gradual, soft descent of that inner edge of my shoulder blades. My ribs are happy to pop up in a way like this. I'm exaggerating, but my rib cage would happily pop up like this if I got more goal-oriented about getting my head to the ground. So reset those ribs. I'm going to use a little bit of strength on the front side of my core when I breathe out to draw my ribs in and down. So while all this is going on with the softening of the upper back so that it can extend and lengthen over the roll, there's some strength going on, front side of my core, and a little bit in my arms to support the weight of my head up here off the ground. I'm going to take about 3 or 4 more breaths. Imagining inhales lengthening my upper spine from where I feel the pressure of the roll all the way through the top of my head. And my exhales, again, just allowing the inner edge of my shoulder blades to descend a little closer to the ground. My knuckles are starting to barely graze the ground now, but I'd like to lead the way down there, this idea that my shoulder blades will one day make it. As soon as I'm down on the ground, I'm going to open my elbows out to the sides. Again, shoulders moving in this direction created an opportunity for the rib cage to flare up and out. So some exhales here are a good idea to just keep the rib cage drawing in and down, away from your armpits. Neck's relaxed, elbows are trying to peel out to the sides, and I'm going to just heel toe my feet out to the edges of my yoga mat. Nice. I'm still trying to stay soft into the pressure of this roll, but again, To allow length and extension and softness on the back side of my body, I need to have support on the front side. So again, those ribs, hugging them in and down. Now keeping my left elbow just right where it's at, I'm going to start to lean my knees over to the right. And just see how far I can take the weight of my legs here without moving my left arm. Feel a bit of a stretch across the left side of the body. More pressure on the right side of my upper back. And then I'll bring my knees through the middle and over the other way. So again, my feet are quite wide here. And I lean my knees to the left without moving my right arm at all. You can have a friend hold your arms gently for you. I sometimes imagine that I have some 15 or 20 pound sandbags I could just drape over my arms to hold them in place. But imagining those sandbags is probably better than actually having them, because it's good to get a feeling for how much pressure you can lean into before your body starts to compensate. So what I want to do here is use the weight of my legs to create a stretch across the side of my body, rolling back and forth across my glutes, rolling across the prop I've created for my upper back. But only to the point where I don't allow my shoulders or my arms to compensate. So it's a little bit less is more. I'm trying to just feel my way into a stretch. And maybe not to whatever my mind thinks is of an end of a range of movement, but just rather sort of slowing down when I get to the edges, moving through the margins of my range of movement. Nice. So after I've gone back and forth maybe 6 or 8 times, I'm going to pause in the middle and take the twist each direction a little bit longer, a little more deliberately. So now my right leg's going to extend straight on the mat. I'm going to start pushing down with my left foot, rolling toward the outside of my right hip. Again, without moving my left arm at all. Just push down with my foot to roll. And as soon as I go as far as I can go without my left arm moving, I'm going to pause, take a couple breaths. And once I've taken a couple breaths, I'm going to press with the outside edge of my right heel down into the ground so that I can scoot my hips over to the left, a few inches. And that allows me to roll even further. I'm still pushing into the ground with my left foot, rolling a little bit further, taking a couple breaths, using breath to massage the stretch across the left side of my body. I might stay right here if this is enough today, but I might, if there's room, take my left foot off the ground and set the arch of it on my right thigh. That way I'm still rolling toward the outside of my right hip, left arm still on the ground, but now I'm able to use the weight of my left leg to affect the stretch even deeper. And it's still, there's more room to be had. I can take my right hand out from behind my head, place it on the outside of my left thigh, and press down to give myself an even deeper twist. I'm still extending a fair bit through the right leg. Crown of my head feels light, like it's extending the other direction. A lot of pressure from the blanket on the right side of my upper back. Take another nice big deep breath here. And then unwind. Place my right hand back behind my head. Realign. Depending on what your roll is made out of, you might find that you've slid in the direction of your head. If that's the case, just give yourself a little bit of a wiggle so the roll is higher up. Pick your hips up, scoot them down, and then we'll take it the other direction. The left leg extends straight, and first just pushing down into the ground with the right foot. Roll toward the outside of your left hip. See how far you can roll without it affecting your right arm. After a breath or 2 or 3 there, push with your left heel, scoot your hips over to the right so that you have room to roll a little further. Once you've rolled a little further and had time to settle into that sensation, that level of opening. If there's room for more, take your right foot off the ground, set the arch of it on your left thigh. Now using the weight of your leg, you can maybe roll a little deeper. And if you need more pressure than just the weight of your right leg, take your left hand out from behind your head, place it on the outside of that thigh, and press down. Wonderful. And then releasing nice and slow. Once I unwind, I'm going to just be really gentle with myself. Realign the hips. I'm going to take a little bit of time just to straighten my legs and straighten my arms and stretch. I'd hook my thumbs together here to give myself a little bit of traction. Reach through the inner edges of my feet, the inseams of my legs. And exhale my front ribs down toward my hip bones. Release your thumbs. Let your elbows bend. Bend your knees, roll off to one side. Crawl onto your hands and your knees. And rock through cat-cow pose. I should mention the disclaimer that it can feel quite achy getting off of the blanket or the towel, whatever you're using for your roll, or your upper back. So we're needing to engage the muscles that we've just spent such a long time trying to soften. And your sensory response to that is an ache for a lot of people. So know that that's normal. Take your time, keep breathing, and move as slow as you need. Nice. After a few rounds of cat-cow, it's nice to take a little bit of a twist. Here, from all fours, we can thread the needle with our arms. With the roll out of my way, I can either bring an elbow down to the ground. So I've just placed my left elbow now right exactly where my hand was. I'm pushing my right hand into the ground. I might even look up over my right shoulder, let my hips find a little sway to the left, back and forth. If you want to go deeper than this, you can slide that left hand all the way over to the right and rest on the outside of your shoulder. Same little sway with your hips. Just trying to find an equal amount of support underneath both of your knees. Nice. And after a few breaths, pressing down to release and taking the other side. So again, an elbow to the ground, or you can slide your arm all the way through, resting on the outside of your shoulder. And then pressing down to release. And after a twist like that, it's nice to just recalibrate and rock through a few rounds of cat-cow. After the next couple of breaths, you can pause. And we'll take the second big opening, and that's the roll for the low back. So you can re-roll your prop if it came undone, if it got a little squished. And we'll get onto the prop this way by laying down first and sliding the roll underneath the lowest part of the low back and the uppermost part of the pelvis. I like to rest my elbows right at the edge of the roll and my hands on my low ribs. Again, just a little reminder to keep them drawing in and down. They're not so tempted to flare out here, but it feels nice to let them move in and down with a little bit of pressure. The roll is at the lowest part of my low back and the uppermost part of my pelvis. And so it's creating a bit of an anterior tilt for my pelvis. My sitting bones are hanging down toward the ground on the far side of the roll. Nice. And again, it's not a goal-oriented action here on the low back roll. It's just a patient process of allowing the muscles that are supported by this roll to soften, to trust the support and allow sort of a softness to permeate that space. You can imagine if your body starts to get goal-oriented about this, if you get this idea that to complete this movement, you get your sitting bones to the ground, you can imagine it would be quite easy to push your butt that way, flare your ribs up, and let your head slide in the direction of the roll. If you're tempted by that, or even just my description of that made you feel like it's happening a little bit, you can take the heels of your hands to your forehead and hold your head in place. Sometimes this position with the hands too just gives you a clearer idea of where your head is compared to your pelvis. So you choose where you'd like to rest your hands. Using your imagination can help in these openings too. Imagining the weight of your this upper compartment of your legs, from your knees all the way down to the bones at the bottom of your pelvis, and how gravity is affecting that weight. Like the weight of your knees could just spill down through your upper legs and drop into the bottom of your pelvis. It's also nice to take a little bit of your attention into the creases in the front of your hips. See if, and you might even feel them there, and see if it's soft. The softer you can get and release those muscles that make up your hip flexors, the easier time you'll have softening over the roll. Again, it's the relationship between what's happening on the front side of your body to what's happening on the back side of your body. The variation that we'll move through here is just to take a lean, again, like we did initially over the upper back roll. Heel toe your feet right beside each other and bring your knees to touch the inner edges of your knees. Keeping your sitting bones hanging over the far side of the roll. We're just going to lean the knees one way and then bring them back through the middle and lean them the other way. And at your own pace, we're going to go back and forth here 6 or 8 times. And again here, it's just using the weight of your legs, leaning, or you might feel a sensation of pressure. You can press against it. But we're moving back and forth from one margin of the range of the end of a range of motion to the margin on the other side. Slowing down when we reach those margins and just staying as soft as we can with the increase in pressure that we feel. And you might find that you want to spend a little bit more time here, letting the knees rock to and fro. If that's the case, you can press pause and just hang out for a bit. Moving through other variations if you know some. But then from here, we're going to release by bringing the feet back out to hip width distance apart, and one leg at a time, picking the knees up with the hands. This again might feel achy because the muscles that we just spent such a long time relaxing need to engage to take this movement. But then we'll rock from side to side. Just massaging those muscles in the low back, but now they're in flexion. Once you've taken a little bit of time to give yourself that kind of a massage, bring your feet back down to the ground. Pick your hips up off the roll, slide it out from underneath you, and we'll thread the needle with our legs from here. So you can take your left ankle up just above your right knee, pick your right foot up, interlace your fingers behind that thigh, and draw your legs in. Nice. So the low back, you can explore variations with your low back here. pushing your sitting bones away as you use the strength of your arms to draw your legs in the other way, creating a little curve in your low back, or you can just let your low back round and press into the ground. Feel there's more space to be had when your low back takes some of this opening for you. I like to take a little bit of a lean when my left foot is up. I take a little lean to the right. Again, just right into the margin of a range of movement in that direction. A couple more breaths. And then I'll roll back to the center, release that leg, and switch sides. Right ankle comes up, pick up the left foot, interlace my fingers behind the left thigh, and start to draw the legs in. And again, I can explore a little bit, ranges of movement with my low back, creating a little bit of a lumbar curve, and then flexing my lumbar spine by squishing my low back down into the ground. Gives me a little more space. I'm going to lean to the left, just an inch or two or three, finding my way into the margin there. Taking a few more breaths. And then gently releasing back to the center. Nice. Unwrap my legs, roll onto my side, and thank you for practicing. These openings can be a really nice way to set yourself up with space before a yoga practice. From this point on, you can move your way through some other, maybe more familiar postures with a lot more space. So enjoy, and thanks for practicing. Namaste.